Hello everyone, this is a YGO-BRonzeMedal here, and welcome to the first video of the series Archetype Explore, where we'll pick and choose an archetype from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and talk about its position in the meta builds and whether you should invest in it or not. As can be seen from the thumbnail, today we're going to talk about vampires, one of my favorite archetypes and in my opinion the best drawn archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links yet. And in order to keep the video short, I will only review the cards which are viable in the current format of the game. Thus, the previously released OG vampires from the Crimson Kingdom, Dawn of Destiny, as well as Resonance of Construct will be excluded from the video except for Vampire Grace. Speaking of Grace, our vegan juice drinker, her effect goes as follow. When a level 5 or higher zombie type monster is special summoned to your side of the field by the effect of a zombie type monster while this card is in your graveyard, you can pay 2 stacks, special summon this card from your graveyard, and once per turn, you can declare one card type monster, spell, or trap. Your opponent sends one card of that type from the deck to the graveyard. Well, too bad her first skill is still unusable due to Mezuki, not to be confused with Gozuki, is still not a thing in Duel Links. However, as far as the second effect goes, it poses as a very good combo when paired up with Vampire Kingdom, which when the bleed effect is applied, you must destroy a card on the field. Interestingly, if you happen to have 2 Graces as well as 2 Kingdoms, you can destroy up to 2 cards that turn. So run 2 Graces in your deck no matter what. Since we've just briefly mentioned Vampire Kingdom, might as well talk about it right now. This one is the field spell of the archetype and the effect goes as follow. Zombie type monster gains 500 attack during damage calculation only. Once per turn, when a card is sent from your opponent's deck to the graveyard, target one card on the field, send one dark vampire monster from your hand or deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that target. Well, this is another core card of the deck that gives you attack boost, graveyard setup, as well as target removal. I would highly recommend you using 2 of these, no more, no less, for the reason which was already explained, and having the second copy is always necessary in case the first one gets destroyed, which it normally does. Note that the target destruction effect is mandatory, so don't use the bleed effect when your opponent has an empty field. Well, but you can always do it for the memes though, right? Next up on the list we have the archetype's pet, Vampire Dog aka Retainer and Vampire Familiar. These two shares almost the same exact effect, which upon being special summoned, you can pay 500 life points at one vampire spell or trap if it's Retainer, or a vampire monster if it's Familiar from your deck to your hand. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send one vampire monster from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard. Special summon this card but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only activate each of the effects once per turn. These two are really good cards and they're primarily structured of the archetype, but run no more than 2 because you wouldn't really want to draw them, and since they are easily sent to the graveyard through the effects of Gozuki, Samurai School and Vampire Kingdom. Or you could also play 1 to 2 econ takes and tribute this normal summon or set monster in order to send them to the graveyard and steal your opponent's monsters. Then next up on the list we have Vampire Grimsum, a wordplay between Crimson and Grim Reaper, the god that governs the death, and her effect actually matches her name pretty nicely by governing whether a monster dies or not, and it goes as follow. If a monster you control would be destroyed by battle or by opponent's card effect, you can pay 1000 for each monster that will be destroyed instead. And at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroys any monster by battle, you can special summon them from the graveyard to your field. Well, in my opinion, this is a very underrated card and I would recommend you to run at least one of it since it's searchable. This card literally allows you to survive a Koa'ki and Ancient Gear matchup. Its protection effect even allows you to bypass Ancient Gear's Reactor's Dragon effect, so you can still protect them even if you're attacked by it. However, please remember that you are protected from destruction effect only and not from battle damage. And also remember that once you use her protection effect, you are forced to protect all the remaining monsters. And if any of your other cards happen to get Canada, your Grimson still protects them even if they are in face down defense position. So I would really recommend you to run it, at least 1, actually no more than 1. Moving on the list we have our good suck Vampire Vamp, our lovely succubus, and her effect goes as follow. Once per turn, when this card or a vampire monster is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls whose attack is higher than this card, equip it to it. This card gains attack equals to the combined original attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect, and if this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped with the monster card, you can special summon it from the graveyard. Well, definitely an interesting and gimmicky boss monster that gives you an easy out to any monsters exceeding 2k attack, such as Maximus, Blue Eyes, Anki, as well as Ancient Gear monsters. One funny thing is that a lot of people seems to forget that she doesn't just give good suck when normal summoned. Instead, she gives a good suck when any of your vampire monsters are normal summoned. So pairing it up with vampire takeover to special summon her during your opponent's end phase can also throw them off a bit, because during your turn you can just normal summon your Grace or any vampire pets and you will be performing good suck to surprise your opponent. So use it, definitely use it once since she is searchable. Well, that's it for the monster lineup. Then we'll have some spell as well as trap cards that were released from the Empire of Scarlet, and we'll be using all of them and one each, except for Vampire Kingdom. To start off with the spell lineup, we have Vampire Domain. Once per turn you can pay 500 life points. During your main phase this turn you can normal summon one vampire monster in addition to your normal summon or set. This effect can only be used once per turn, and each time your vampire monsters inflicts battle damage to your opponent, gain that same amount of life points. This is another great card overall, since you will be paying tons of life points to activate your skills. This form of life point recovery is excellent. Not to mention that the additional normal summon is simply great, especially when your normal summon or set is usually used on Samurai Skull as well as Gozuki. Next up on the spells lineup, we have Vampire's Desire. This card can only be activated once per turn and you can use one of the following effects. Target one face-up monster you control, send one vampire monster from your deck to the graveyard with a different level from that monster, and if you do, that monster becomes a level of that sent monster until the end of this turn. Or you can target one vampire monster from your graveyard, send one monster you control to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon the targeted monster. Well, this is another pretty solid card, although it's not seen as much as the others. It gives you quick graveyard setup, and when paired up with Econ Take, you can send one of the stolen monsters from your opponent to the graveyard to revive one of your vampires. Well, I can understand why not many people use this card, to be fair, but if Black Rose Dragon ever becomes a thing, make sure to attach one of these as well as one unknown synchro, and you'll be able to synchro summon Black Rose Dragon really easily and no one will ever see it coming, believe me. And finally, we're down to our last card of the Vampire's archetype, and it's a trap card. It's called Vampire Takeover, a really good card, so make sure to run one of it, and the effect goes as follow. If you have no cards in your field zone and all face-up monsters you control, minimum one, are zombie type monsters, activate one Vampire Kingdom directly from your deck, then you can special summon one Dark Vampire monster from your graveyard in face-up defense position. You can only use one takeover per turn. Well, another great fucking card. It protects you from OTK, searches for your field spell, it revives your playmakers, or you can revive your pets, which will give you another search. This is easily a +2 card, otherwise you can just revive your Grace during your opponent's end phase. You won't even need to worry that she's gonna get Canadia without being able to use the bleed effect on your opponent to pop up a card with your field spell. This is really good card, run one of it because it can be searched first turn. In regards to their playstyle, vampires are characterized by their fast-paced gameplay, versatility in dealing with many situations, strong field swarming capabilities, high search power, and their field and deck control effects. Basically, the archetype focuses on getting their field spell Vampire Kingdom as well as Vampire Grace onto the field as quickly as possible by searching them out through the effects of Vampire Retainer and Familiar, with the pets themselves being sent to the graveyard through the effect of Gozuki, Samurai Skull, Vampire Kingdom, as well as enemy controller if you choose to play two of enemy controllers instead of Hatrenade. So to maximize consistency as well as survivability, the deck will contain between 20 to 22 cards and the build will go as follow. First off, I will tell you my staple cards. There will be 18 of them. For the first one is 1 Vampire Vamp, 2 Vampire Graces, 2 Gozukis or 3, but I personally prefer 2 since they can get Canadia'd and their effect won't go off. Then there will be 3 Samurai Skulls, 2 Retainer, 2 Familiars, 2 Vampire Kingdoms, 1 Domain, 2 Enemy Controllers or 2 Hatrenades or 1 of each if you want, as well as 1 Vampire Takeover. And depending on the meta as well as your preferences, I would recommend you to run 4 of the following 8 cards. 1 Vampire Crimson, which I totally recommend, especially when there are so many destruction effects going on, such as the new Phoenix Monster, U-Bells, Level Monsters, Koa'ki, Miru, Maximus and Ice, so on and so forth. 1 Vampire Desires, 2 Sphere Kuribos to prevent OTK, and add either 2 Canadias or 2 Floodgate Trap Holes for disruption. In regards to skills, the Vampire archetype can play pretty much any of them that has a life point drop requirement for its activation, or simply any skills that can boost your consistency or to disrupt your opponent's play. For example, some of the most preferred skills are Yami Yugi's Destiny Draw, Bandit Kiss Bandit or Switcheroo, Mokuba's Kaiba Court Bling for easily accessible prismatic enemy controller, great card by the way, as well as Ishizu's Seal Tombs. Out of these 5 skills, I'd say that running Kyber Court Bling and Seal Tombs are the best options, although I'm more inclined on recommending you guys to play Seal Tombs since this skill affects every meta deck one way or the other and it literally slaughters the new Phoenix and Level decks as well as Vampire decks. Then just for fun, you can also use skills with harder or more specific activation requirements such as Yugi's SS Deny, Ishizu's No Mortal Can Resist, which is quite similar to Seal Tombs, but instead it turns all the monsters from your opponent's graveyard to freaking Skull Servants, laughing my ass off. Definitely a hilarious skill. Next we have Zombie Boy's Posthumous Army for when Book of Life becomes a thing in Duel Links and to simply screw with slow books and Buster Bladers decks. I hate those. Lastly, there's Tristan's I'm Not Done Yet and Mokuba's Evolution skill, which allows you to evolve one of your Samurai Skulls to Vampire Grimson, or from Grimson to Vampire Grace, or from Vampire Grace to Vampire Vamp. Evolution is definitely an interesting skill that can be paired up with the spell card Vampire Desires to switch up some levels and to make some unexpected plays. Definitely worth trying. And that's it for the skill sections. At last, I'm going to rate the archetype based on 5 parameters: consistency, OTK potential, survivability, comeback ability, and versatility, with 1 star being the lowest rating and 5 stars being the highest rating. In regards to consistency, Vampires gets a 5 star, since it has great search power and all it needs to draw is simply a Samurai Skull or Gozuki or Familiar or Retainer plus an enemy controller at the start of the game to start all of their plays. Yet another 5 stars for OTK potential. This deck can easily remove 2 to 3 cards before the battle phase even starts, and can easily deal 4k damage in one single turn. In survivability, I'm giving them a 4.5 stars, since they can easily search for Vampire Takeover or even Domains, which is very useful at preventing OTKs or to recover some life points. In addition, even when their normal summon monsters, Samurai Skull or Gozuki die, one by effect and another by battle, they will be able to special summon a monster from your deck or hand. Regardless, I cut off 0.5 inches because all of their monsters tends to have small Ds. In comeback ability, I'm giving them 4 stars due to all the search effects. However, once their life point drops below 1000 or 500, their search power drops and coming back becomes extremely difficult. Even though Vampire's deck are known for their versatility, I'm going to give them 4 stars, cause all of their destruction effects are targeting effects, so when it goes against decks whose monsters are immune to targeting effects and have at least 2600 attacks, such as Obelisk decks or Level decks, or even decks which forbids monsters effects activation like Destiny Hero Blue D or Buster Blader decks, it becomes an auto loss. Now for real, finally we're at the end of the video and I'm rating this archetype to have an overall score of 4.5 stars. And to those of you who are asking on whether or not you should invest in this deck, I'd say yes. Go right ahead because this deck can get you to King of Game really easily, and who doesn't want that vaguely titled King of Games, right? But if you already have decks which can get you to King of Games, you might just want to wait till new main boxes or mini boxes drops. Perhaps newer and more powerful archetypes will appear soon enough. Although it shouldn't be of immediate concern, it is worth mentioning that Vampire Grace's Bloody Fat and Vampire Kingdoms combo might get old at one point, cause sooner than later, all the bleed effect is gonna do might just help your opponent set up their graveyard or to get rid of cards they don't already need. Nevertheless, this archetype is still worth considering, given that I don't think any of their cards will get limited or semi-limited. Believe it or not, this top tier deck is simply that balanced. And as the game progresses, we might even get more generic zombie type support, such as Uni-Zombie for synchro plays, Shiranui Solitaire to search for this Tuna, Book of Life, or even Mezuki for more revival and control. We might even get to use Scarlet, Vampire Scarlet I mean, if XZ summoning becomes a thing, which to be honest they are already preparing for it, I can see signs of it. So stay tuned for more, like the video, subscribe, do all the good stuff, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. Hey, if you have watched until this point, thank you very much for watching once again, and here are some of the vampire cards which I excluded from the video. And have fun guys, that's it, bye bye.